welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Procurement Pivots podcast. And on today's session, we're going to be talking about the grand topic of purpose. So what are your thoughts on this one, Donna?
Well, I think through our discussions, we both know that purpose comes up a lot in the work and the conversations that we're having with our individual clients. And so we thought that this was going to be a really, really important topic to start talking about. But I think you're right. Like when we hear, kind of questions like, what is your purpose? Like it can feel really grand, can't it? Like, am I here to like save the planet or something? And that's not necessarily what we're talking about today. So we thought purpose was going to be a really great topic to just to discuss further, really. So where should we begin, Laura?
Well, I just want to touch on what you said there, because there is this thing about it being such a grand thing. Like, what do you mean, what's my purpose? It's such a coachy thing, or it's such a thing where people who are in, I don't know, really well-known roles, well, they've got a purpose. Here's just my purpose. It's about really breaking it down, because we all have one. We all have one, and it's about really breaking it down to an individual level. There's obviously purpose in terms of a team, which we'll touch upon later, but I definitely think that from a focus of a coaching conversation, it's around, what matters to you? What are you here to achieve? So there's a lot of goal stuff, strategic stuff in there, but there's also that thing about the values, which, we've got another episode on. But how do you see this show up in your coaching sessions, Donna?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for me, understanding why we do the things that we do, and even more importantly, why we want to do the things that we do. It can change absolutely everything for me, really. And I think actually it can take quite a lot of thought, I think, for many people, myself included, actually. Like years ago, I don't think I ever really thought about things like this. What's my purpose? And it was probably a few years ago where I first started thinking about this. In my life, in my career, in my work. Like, why is it that I do the things that I do? Like, what do I most enjoy? How do I want to help people, etc. And it can just make such a massive, massive, massive difference. I think really understanding the heart of why we're making specific choices, and not just why we're making the choices, but why we're staying there as well. So yeah, I think without this, particularly, again, we always say this, like it's pretty tough right now. It's like the world's a challenging place to live in, to work in, and there's great expectations on all of us in work, out of work, and sometimes if we don't know why we're doing those things, like we can just feel really beaten down. And I think that's where sometimes things like burnout can kick in. But actually, when you really understand the heart of why you've chosen to do the things that you're doing, like it can really, really help, I think, with kind of just your motivation in those tougher times, to keep you going, to stop you burning out, maybe to just build that resilience that you need. So I think it's really, really powerful, I think, to delve into your own why or your own purpose in kind of what it is you do and how you show up, basically.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned resilience earlier. The way that I see purpose is also like a navigation system. It keeps you going when the chips are down and things feel really tough. And things are tough, like you say, we're living in a really uncertain world, and things can feel tough in terms of the way that procurement's evolving.
Mm.
It's definitely something where they're having to, as a profession, constantly evolve and think on their feet and try and move into that response rather than firefighting mode. So I think it's something where if you are connected in or you're aware of, you're in touch with what that purpose is for you, it can really help to fuel you when you go through those challenging times. So that's for me where one of the most powerful parts of purpose comes into play, because on the days when you don't feel like doing it or you feel like
Mm.
it's too hard to do it, the purpose is what will say, no, come on, we're going to keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah. And I think also with even when it comes to things like decision making,
Mm,
which can be hard, like, sometimes even the small decisions can take a lot of time and a lot of energy to
mm,
make. And I think sometimes it's that kind of that North Star of your purpose that can help you to quickly, be much more decisive, and know that you're making the right decision for the right reasons. But I think also boundaries as well.
mm.
I think, many of us, I mean, I'm still, very much still working on my boundaries, let's say, but I think sometimes it can really help to shape as well, kind of, what the red flags are, what your boundaries need to be, what you want your boundaries to be as well. So yeah, it can be really, really powerful, I think, for people.
Yeah, and the boundaries piece is definitely something that comes up a lot, because especially when you are in a role like procurement where you're trying to add value all the time to your stakeholders, and so you want them to notice you, you want them to invite you into the room, you want to be visible to them, and that can mean sometimes that we cross those boundaries to go the extra mile. And
Hmm.
sometimes it either doesn't get appreciated, or if it does, it then becomes an expectation. And then you've gone beyond what you're here to do, and it can be really
Mm.
distracting. So that's why it's always really good to be in touch with what your purpose is, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think
Mm.
that's such a good point, actually. You know, one of the, again, purposes of procurement is to get really close to the business and build those relationships and
Mm.
deliver and support for the business. And sometimes, like, there's just such a lot of noise, isn't there, that people have to cut through. Like, once you've started to break down those barriers, suddenly, there's a lot of noise coming in your direction, and
Mm.
you need to kind of have a way to almost cut through it and understand, which bits require most focus. So yeah, I think that's a really good point that you made about that.
Mm. Yeah, and something else I think is worth touching on is about how purpose can change.
Mm.
What you wanted from your career 10 years ago might not be what you want from it now, or
Mm.
the way that you show up to your career might be different now. And I think so being constantly aware of what what it is that you want from something, but also what it means to you, I think is also really important. And again, as I've said, procurement's evolving, so the purpose of it is also going to change. So we'll come on to talking about a wider industry purpose and team purpose, but I just think being in touch with that on an individual
Mm.
level is really important.
Yeah, and just going back to the point you made a moment ago, like, again, we've mentioned it before on other episodes, but the majority of people are still saying, I fell into procurement. And actually, it can be quite accidental, that first kind of decision to go into procurement. But actually, I think it's kind of understanding why you've stayed there can
Mm.
really make a difference as well, rather than
Mm.
just going through the motions. I fell into it and I've just kind of stuck with it.
Mm.
It's actually kind of just making sure you're still in check with, why it is you want to remain in procurement, and not just because you're there and that's what I do, and it will be really difficult to do something else.
It's so easy to get carried away by the tide. you know, because things happen outside your, you know, in your personal life that might mean, okay, I don't need to think about or make a change for my career because this is going on in my life. So yeah, I think being in touch with that initial purpose, and even if somebody did fall into it, they've fallen into it because either their strengths lended themselves well
Mm.
to a procurement role, or it just happened and then, you know, you might have chosen to stay. But sometimes people can get 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line, however many, and lose touch or lose connection with that because, you know, the mundane has taken over or frustrations have set in. So sometimes it's a bit of a journey to go back and look at actually what did I used to enjoy about procurement and how can I bring that back into my role now?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it can, I think I've definitely seen it with clients that I've worked with that maybe initially weren't fully aware of their purpose or their why, but reconnecting back into that, for some kind of really enabled them to almost like reinvigor their enjoyment of
Mm,
their current role in their
yeah,
current circumstance. And
yeah.
it can just change your mindset so much, can't it? Like actually, you know, sometimes we focus on the frustrations and the day-to-day kind of niggles and annoyances, but actually, you know, kind of don't necessarily notice the kind of the great stuff that's going on as well. So I
Mm,
think just yeah, like you say, kind of reconnecting back into that just to be able to then assess, okay, like, so what does that mean for my current situation,
mm,
and how aligned do I still feel? Do I still feel as aligned as I used to? If not,
mm,
why not? How could that change potentially? Not necessarily change companies, change roles, but how could it be improved and bettered? And sometimes it can and sometimes it can't. But you know, some of it is going to be within our control and some of it absolutely not
mm.
within our control.
But don't you think as well that doing that exploratory work on purpose, and other things that are connected to that can also re-energize you? And I know you said invigorates you, but also helps you to have that separation between what is within your control and what isn't. It
Mm,
might enable you to let go of a bit more of the stuff
yeah,
that's not so much in your control because it doesn't form part of your purpose anyway.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, from a personal perspective, you know, I had not really thought actively about what my purpose was. Like I was in a recruitment career, you know, generally it was going well. I'd kind of, you know, done the typical climb the ladder, moved into more senior roles, etc. And I'd been helping everyone else in their careers for such a long
Mm,
time. But it was only when I stopped and started thinking about these things that actually I really became crystal clear on what it is I want for my personal life, what it is I want from my work life, and actually why do I do this stuff, and what elements of what I was doing did I most love. And for
mm,
me, then it became really obvious that, you know, there were certain parts of what I was doing to support individuals that I loved, like absolutely loved. And, you know, I kind of then did feel like that is what I want to be doing. Like I want to be
mm,
able to help people to move forward themselves. And for me, like actually going from probably not being that clear on it and realizing the importance of it to suddenly understanding it, like it changed everything. Because that's, I mean, that's
mm,
why I ended up setting up the business. And I think
mm,
you had a similar kind of, you know, situation yourself, didn't you? Which then kind of
mm,
caused you to kind of pivot in your career as well.
mm. Yeah, I did, you know, so and it's so funny because my move into the procurement world was intentional. So but then the roles that I did not fall under a typical procurement banner.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how your career can take twists and turns. I think the interesting thing for me though around that purpose, and you were saying about what do I want from my career? What do I want from my life? What do I want here? Even that in itself can feel quite overwhelming because
Mm,
I've got to think about, oh, not just about the job, I've also got to think about life. But actually
mm,
connecting back to the foundation of, you know, and we use the word purpose because there are things within that. But coming back to that sometimes has a knock-on effect and a ripple effect on the other
mm,
stuff. And so I was having this conversation in a coaching session this morning about sometimes if you focus on that really core purpose, what's important to you, why you're doing something, you'll be
mm,
surprised at what other doors open that are aligned with other parts of your life, because you're focusing on things that really matter to you. So, and it sounds so, I don't know, like very woo, I think we would say in the coaching world, to be, I'll fulfill your purpose, and actually it's just about stripping it back, going
Mm,
right down to the core and starting there, and then building upon those solid foundations. And it's just surprising. You do one thing, and then all of a sudden it has a ripple effect on the next thing. And then
mm,
it's not a coincidence. It might
mm,
feel like it at first. So I think that's something that I've certainly started to see both from my own career, but also what I'm seeing with some clients. I had a client message me saying, it's not a coincidence, is it? No, it's not. It's where that hard work that you've done
yeah.
has then met the opportunity, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah. So we've spoken a little bit there about kind of why we think like actually understanding the purpose in what we're doing can make a big difference. But I know we've spoken a lot in the past about the purpose of procurement as a
Mm.
function. So should we move on to that as a topic next, do you think?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm smiling because I love this topic because I think something that I hear a lot is, oh, we're a unique bunch, or what we do is not really procurement compared to what some other organizations might do. And actually, what they're doing is that they're bending and flexing their function to meet the needs of their stakeholders and their organization.
Mm,
So that's why I'm smiling, because I've heard it. I used to think it only existed in one particular organization that I was familiar with, and I heard it again and I heard it again.
yeah.
But I think there's two things on the purpose of procurement for me, is that because it's evolving, you need to know what that purpose is for the moment where you're at. So if you are building a procurement function from the ground up, you are going to be focusing on different things to what
Mm,
somebody who is in an established procurement function is going to be focusing on. And I think
yeah.
this is where we don't offer enough nuance when it comes to LinkedIn content. And I told you there's probably an episode in just LinkedIn for me, but that we can maybe focus on. But I think that's where it can really, you've got to be very clear on what your purpose is for the stage of procurement that you're at in the organization, because
Mm.
that is what's going to have the greatest impact for you in your world, so to speak. I don't know if I
Yeah.
went on a bit of a mini rant there,
No, no,
but
no, 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 it was good. But I think as well, like I hear in the work that I've done and I'm doing now, like often there is this disconnect with kind of the business view of the purpose of procurement versus maybe the functions view as well. And I've
Mm.
seen it on so many different occasions. Now it's not in every scenario at all, but I think I've seen it kind of people securing new roles, they've had a good conversation as part of the interview process, they end up landing in this role, and within the first 3 months, it's becoming really apparent that there is this massive disconnect in terms of really understanding,
Mm.
what procurement is actually there to do in that organisation. And I do think there needs to be alignment, doesn't there? I mean, I think the business can be influenced, and thoughts will evolve about what it can look like. But essentially, I think there needs to be the purpose of procurement is there to deliver for the business, and for the business to there needs to be that kind of I guess that correlation in terms of why the business feels that procurement is there versus the function itself. And often there is quite a big disconnect, I think.
I think that's a great point. And yeah, I see it all the time, And I think, and this is where you might hear, well, we need to educate them more. I think there's a real balance between educating about procurement, but also asking them for their needs. And that's where the curiosity comes in, the soft skills, the engagement skills, the coaching skills, really. So, I think that's a really valid point, and that's why, again, being connected to the purpose of what you're there for, and where there is a gap, where there is that
Mm,
misalignment, that's where the curiosity comes in. It's where the questions come in, the having the confidence to
yeah.
say, I feel that there's a gap here, or I see there's a gap. What I'm hearing is you
Mm,
want this from us, but we've got this challenge. Where do we meet in the middle? And I think that's a really important thing to be mindful of when it comes to purpose, because it's going to be a rocky road sometimes, and that purpose sort of fuels you, like we were saying, when things are
mm,
hard. It's like, okay, how do we realign that? And I think, that conversation needs to be had,
Yeah. I
so.
think going back to your point about, different businesses are at very different stages. Some are in growth, some are in recovery, some are in startup. Like businesses, they have very, very different needs and expectations of procurement. And I think sometimes, I've definitely experienced it, in the past that, I think sometimes there can be this kind of one size fits all. This is how I go and build a procurement function. This is what I've done 2, 3 times before. But actually, just because you've done something in a certain way previously doesn't always mean that that is going to be fit for purpose for every single environment and every single organization. So I think really, like, it sounds obvious, but like really understanding the makeup of that business environment, helps to shape, doesn't it, the purpose of procurement at that time in that business at that stage that they're at. And it will evolve, it will change, but it's it can't be a one size fits all at all. Obviously there's going to be recurring themes and topics, etc., but businesses need very different things to the next business.
Yeah, great point. And I think as well, that's why it's even more important to be really connected to that individual sense of purpose, right? Because you've got your track record of what you've delivered. And like you say, it could be that what you really enjoy about procurement is the startup phase. For others, it's like they want to be in the mature phase of procurement as a function. So understanding that part of it is really, really important, but also being present enough to recognize where those gaps are, like we were saying earlier. So I definitely think having that connection to it is really important, really
Yeah,
important.
yeah,
And then there's also this thing about the team, right? So if you're leading a team and setting up a procurement function, you've got a few people underneath you. How do you get the team to play to their strengths and to recognize the purpose of their role and how it fits in the organization? That's a really, really
yeah,
interesting
yeah,
point, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, definitely. And it's almost like, part of it is purpose, but also I think that ties into things like identity as well, doesn't it?
Mm,
How do you as a collective create that identity for procurement and collectively kind of, agree, why you're there and how you're going to show up to the business time and time again. So I think it's also, um, having that kind of, a collaborative approach to leadership within your team where, where you're leading, but you're also giving people the opportunity for their voice to be heard as well, and for them to, participate and really understand kind of what their part to play is in the grand kind of,
mm.
bigger picture. But I think also understand, as individuals, like we're saying, how important it is to understand why we're here. It's the same for those team members. They're going to
Yeah.
have the purpose in their role, but they're also going to have their own individual kind of purpose for doing the career that they do as well. And it's kind of, I think, supporting, individuals to kind of actively think about that for themselves as part of their own kind of career planning and career growth.
And I think this is a really good point where we sort of split out into what purpose is in terms of strategic and goal-driven purpose,
Mm,
and what's in that thing about what matters to them. And that's where I think, we've sort of danced around both of those two themes. But I think what you've said is really important there, because I think once you understand your purpose and what matters to you, it gives you space to then think, oh, actually, it might be different for this team member that I've got. And certainly when it comes to leading a procurement team, you might have some that are really strong in negotiation. That's what they really enjoy. You've
mm,
got others who like the methodical, process-driven, analytical work. So I think that's also really important to know and understand what matters to people, what they get driven by, and how that fits
mm,
within the purpose of the team for the organization. So it's multi-layered, isn't it? This, we're covering
totally.
we're covering purpose in one particular episode, but I think the learning here for me is that being able to split it out, and you've got three different things here. You've got your individual, you've got your team, you've got the
Yeah,
organization, and how do you
yeah.
link those together?
Yeah, and I would kind of almost go further than that. I don't know what the heading is for it, but I just think in everything that we do, like we need to understand why we're doing it. Like we've spoken a lot about things like raising our profile to, enhance our careers or visibility, but it's actually really thinking about, well, why? Like why do I want to do that? What am I hoping to achieve in doing that? LinkedIn, and this is certainly not an episode on LinkedIn. I don't know why it keeps coming back to LinkedIn. But in the work that I do with my clients, like it's actually helping them to position themselves often for the next move internally, externally, and we are looking at some kind of areas like LinkedIn, but it's actually like understanding your why. And we start with that. I think people are sometimes surprised, like when we start with, actually, how do you feel about it? And why do you want to be there? And how do you want people to perceive you? And what are you hoping to get from it? That can shape what you do there and why you're there. But if we like it's I think if we don't know why we're doing something, we're almost kind of just going through the motions and just doing it. Oh, I'm just on there because people say I need to be on there, and I'm just posting, but I don't really know what I'm posting or why I'm posting it. I'm just posting because people say you need to post to increase your visibility. Whereas actually, I think when you really break down why, and I think, I'm sure you've done it a lot with your clients, kind of almost like asking the why repeatedly. Yeah, but why? But why? But why? And like sometimes, the first thing you think, it's not the real reason, is it? It's like actually, if you keep digging and keep delving, you'll get to the real genuine heart of why it is you want to actually do something. And that can really, really then positively shape the action.
Yeah, absolutely. It leads to action that's, and we come back to this word all the time, intentional,
Mm,
because sometimes we do get swept away in the tide and the shoulda, woulda, coulda, and the I should be doing this because so
yeah.
and so said, I should be doing this because this is what somebody
Mm,
else did. And I think this is where the beauty of coaching really helps because I will share stories, of things that I've witnessed and things, but at the same time, it's not about what somebody else did, it's about what was right for you. And that can feel really daunting at first if you've not if you don't relate to the way somebody else has
yeah.
done something, and you can feel a bit lost. But when you actually, like you say, uncover and
Yeah.
really delve deeper, I think it can really be a big light bulb moment for somebody because it actually answers a lot of questions that they might not have had answered years prior. So
Mm,
I think, that's definitely something that is worth following through. And again, I've said it in a previous episode, I think it was on the one before this, around this work that you do on yourself is never a wasted effort. It might show up
totally.
for you differently in other places, but it's whenever I do purpose work and values work, and again, we'll have values as another episode, but I think it's always a session that people come out of going, oh, that makes so much sense. And they
Mm,
feel a sense of new energy and new motivation that they've probably not had for a while.
yeah. And actually, again, as we said, kind of values will be a different episode, but that's often like when people are feeling stuck and sometimes they don't know why they're stuck, like often it does come down to like there's no longer that alignment with the core values. And but I think sometimes that's hard to see, isn't it, until you kind of you delve and dig a bit deeper.
Mm,
But again, just going back to your kind of shoulda, woulda, coulda, I think, comment, like that should word comes up so much, doesn't it? So much. And
mm,
um, I hear it all the time with clients that are, they're at a career transition. Do I stay? Do I go? What do I do? And it's like, I think I should do this. I think I should do this. And it's like, I think, like, again, the purpose for me, it just comes back to, but what do you want? What do you want to do? As opposed to that kind of, what do you feel you should be doing? Like, start with the, what is it you'd love to be doing? Because really, I'm a big believer. Like, I think anything kind of is really possible.
mm,
But if you don't know potentially what it is you'd love to do, you're probably never going to get there. So, and again, this is not a really easy, like, oh, I asked myself that question once and da-da, I've got the magic answers. Like sometimes this takes quite a lot of work to think about the genuine, like, what would I love to do? That's not an easy thing for some people to answer. But actually, yeah, I think that should word, like, I think we all need to recognize when we're actually saying that to ourselves, like, should I? It's actually what do I want? Like, we have choice. So what do you want to be doing? What would you love to be doing?
I think the word should is often when it's actually somebody else's voice, So that it
Mm,
could come from years ago. It could come from an influential person. That's not always a positive influence. You could be working
hmm
under a line manager who's just not interested in career development, and I've seen it before, where they're worried about their own career progression and therefore they'll give the time to invest in their team's progression. And so that should is carried with the individual because either they've received some feedback or somebody else has projected their should onto them.
mm,
So when it comes to, you made a great point about how it does take work, you've got to peel it back. This is what we do is we peel back the layers of actually, okay, is this feedback serving you? How
mm,
does it help you? What can you let go of? And when
mm,
it has been a bad experience with a line manager, and I'm picking on line managers, there are some great line managers out there. It's not always, it's just a really easy example to use where you think, okay, I'm feeling like I don't have choice or I don't feel like I'm empowered. And it's probably because they've let somebody influence them too much.
mm,
And that's not through it's not always through your control if you've got somebody who's calling the shots, right? But I think that's where you can, by stepping away and having a conversation with somebody who's not involved in the politics, you can actually gain some of that power back, and realizing that those shoulds are not all yours to hold and not all yours to
mm,
carry. So again, going deep, typical Laura, but it's I think certainly I notice myself saying should sometimes. And it's like, okay, is
mm.
that mine or is it somebody else's?
Yeah, great point. Um, so should we come to some takeaways then for people,
Mm.
do you think? That'd probably be
Yeah,
quite helpful, wouldn't it?
yeah. What's
What
your
do
first
you
one?
well, I think probably assess whether do you genuinely have an understanding of why you're doing the things that you're doing. Do you understand what your purpose is in your choice of career, maybe broader life as well. And I think I would just, start with almost that kind of assessment of where are you right now
Mm.
in your understanding. And it might be that you are already absolutely crystal clear, fantastic, but actually, equally, it might be that you're, for instance, where I was a few years ago, and I just hadn't really overly given much thought to these kind of
Mm.
things. Yeah, I think just almost just a sense check first of all, just to yeah, just kind of assess really, like, how clear are you right now of what your, let's start with work, of what your purpose is at work. And I think, let that answer then kind of shape what you then do next.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great takeaway. I think, and to build on that, I think once you know that, it gives you the courage and the fuel to go through tricky times, to handle difficult situations, I think it also feels
Yeah.
courage to make a brave decision around your career or around the way that you
Mm,
show up. So I think that's definitely another takeaway for me. And I don't think we can ignore the takeaway when it comes to actually purpose as a collective within your
definitely.
procurement team and the stage of procurement that you're at,
Mm,
of building that team and that function and recognizing that might be working for somebody else might not be what you need. So it's about being
yeah.
connected with that.
Yeah, and maybe just on that point as well, just almost a kind of a proactive sense check of, where does your purpose for the function sit versus maybe the view from the business as well, and just see, is that aligned already, or is there work to be done to kind of to bring those two slightly differing purposes and visions together.
Yeah, great point. I mean, like we've said with many of these episodes, right, there's lots we could delve into beyond the initial subject of purpose. So if anyone's got any feedback, what they'd like to hear more of, there might be a thread that you want us to pull out a bit more, please let us know, because we're really keen to bring more episodes to you that are aligned with what you need and what, like say you might have heard something that you want to know more about. So please get in touch.
Yeah, brilliant. Great point. Thanks, Laura, and thanks everyone.
Brilliant.
Great
Cheers.
to have you here. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.